Start off with our welcome and our introductions, and then Sharon's going to get into a little bit around actually building effective campus community partnerships and the toolkit that we have with that just launched today. And then I'll speak a little bit about some of the community campus partnerships that CICMH is helping to support. So Sharon is a social impact strategist who has over 2 decades of experience as a designer, facilitator, and evaluator of collaborative social strategies. And we at the center have been working with Sharon for the past 2 years, but Sharon also consults with social sector organizations, foundations, and private companies to help design and develop social impact strategies, plans, and evaluative tools that are used to monitor, demonstrate, and communicate impact. So Sharon, thank you so much for making the time today. And my name is Cecilia Makahene, and I am the Community Partnership Coordinator here at CICMH. So I'm doing a lot of the organizational and project management support pieces on the Campus Community Project, which is really all about getting campuses and communities better connected. And just a little bit of background on me, sort of prior to my work here at the center, I did a lot of work in health promotion at the University of Toronto, so I also come from a bit of a campus lens and background as well. So I just wanted to get into a bit of an overview of CICMH in case anybody is new and doesn't really know a lot about our history or where we come from. So we are actually a partnership of 5 organizations. So those organizations include Colleges Ontario, Ontario's universities, the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, the College Student Alliance, and the Canadian Mental Health Association's Ontario Division. And our physical offices are actually housed at CMHA Ontario's offices as well. And CICMH's mission is really to help Ontario's colleges and universities enhance their capacity to support student mental health and well-being. So really, we're here to support you in sort of whatever your work is around students, to making sure that you are best equipped to do that work and able to work as effectively as possible. So when looking at sort of the folks who CICMH serves, we really work to serve the entire campus. So whether you are working in health services, you're in counseling, accessibility, if you work with particular student populations, so maybe Indigenous student services or international student services, or even if you're a student leader or community partner, we're here to help support you in the work that you're doing around student mental health. So our strategic priorities really fall into 3 main buckets, and those are knowledge management, which is really trying to provide as many learning opportunities as we can that are focused around the needs of our constituents. We do a lot of pieces around promotion, so sharing things around best practices and emerging practices all across campuses and community. And then we also do a lot of engagement and collaboration pieces. So most of that work is focused around building stronger connections. And that's really where we're going to be focused in on today. So now we'll go back a couple slides and we will actually launch our first poll of the day. So So we'll get you folks to vote on this poll. And the first question is, how many of you are currently in a campus or community partnership? So we'll give you a few moments for that. Right, so let's take, so we'll end the poll. And it looks like the majority of us are in partnerships. So that's really great to hear that folks are starting to make those connections. So we'll move to our second poll now. And this one is more focused around sort of what realm you're coming from today. So we're wondering whether you work on campus and community or if you're in another space. All right, so it looks like a pretty even split between folks who are on campus and community, and we've also got a few others. So if you work in another space, you're more than welcome to share and then chat sort of where you're coming from so we can learn a little bit more about your organization as well.
Well, strength and ability to work together. And this is a and this healthy to just add monitoring them so really the question is why cut? And I have been working in the with research and supporting other development and always everyone is looking for some more funders are requesting those of you familiar with the impact. So it's always a request and identification of working. And here really is, within our environment that the need for health and individual organizations are all struggling with these. We really do see working together for each and every one of campuses, community, unique skills, resources, and resources to benefit the other. And we also know that everyone is have their kind of support. And so the work of the center is there to help support and facilitate that, those connections. And as Cecilia mentioned before, this presentation is one of the main focuses of the website are to when we're talking about it really is the idea of working together. It can be ideally increased numbers of students served who are the needs, decreasing time of wait lists, improving the referrals to community agencies, as well as increasing the options for service options for on and off campus, as well as really supporting those students to transition them to meet their needs. We do believe that together we can create. Oh, I'm just being told, my apologies. I hear that you couldn't, that we had a problem with the microphone, so I'll go back. So we'll start again. We always said I've never been in a webinar that there wasn't a bit of technological glitches. So as I began, really recognizing that the demand and need for mental health services and support is increasing on campuses across the province, actually across the country, and both campus and community partners are having a hard time meeting that demand. As a result, we also know that each and every organization has unique skills and abilities that can strengthen and support others when working together. So the work that we've been doing here within the center, as well as the toolkit launch today, is really to identify if we can increase the capacity to work together, more students will receive the supports they need, and our ultimate goal is really to create a healthier post-secondary campuses across the province for all. How's the hearing now? All good? As we move in terms of outcomes, what we're looking for is really to increase the number of students served, decreasing the wait list, improving opportunities for referrals to community agencies who may have more specialized programs and supports for individual students, as well as just even identifying options both on and off campus for student support, and improving those transitions for students needing greater support. And it is, as we said before, it is creating a healthier campus for all and recognizing that it is our future workforce, and it's supporting both students today and into their futures. Wanting to just provide a bit of an overview of what is in the toolkit. At the bottom, you'll see that we have the link to the website. But at first, it's a discussion of the types of campus and community partnerships that are happening right now, different opportunities, whether it is for training supports, identifying opportunities for referral, and structured MOUs, so working more closely together, whether it's counseling supports during crisis sessions, as well as on and off campus mobile units, etc. So after that, there'll be the next section is really talking about the steps for building a collaborative partnership. You know, from who am I supposed to work with, who can I, moving forward. And then I want to spend a bit of time and talking about what are some of the elements of effective partnerships. And we put together a bit of a checklist that you can use to either review your current partnerships, because many of you have identified that you're in a partnership and how that would work, but also for those thinking of new ones to go through it. And then, of course, there are benefits, of course, of working in partnership, but there are also some risks. So really want to be able to go through them with you and then finally give some tips for successful partnerships. After that, there's a section talking about the work that Cecilia and her team are doing here at the Center for Innovation for Campus Mental Health, what supports they can give to you. There's some additional resources and links, case studies, as well as memorandums of understanding and other samples, so you don't have to start from a blank piece of paper. So now we're going to go on to our next poll, and just to get a sense from you of what you're interested about, either you're currently working on or what you might be wanting to look for.
Andrea?
Excellent. I think we're going to end the poll, and it really is a nice balance identifying across the board, but definitely as strong as establishing a referral process so that we can have those smooth transitions between campus and community support services. It sounds that someone has their mic on.
I think if by any chance you have your mic on, if you could please just mute it so that we're not getting too much audio feedback. Thank you.
So now I'd like to spend some time walking through the various steps of building a collaborative partnership. And really the first step is to actually determine whether or not there is a need for a partnership. It's not, partnerships are wonderful, but they're not always necessary. And so you need to, is there a need? Are there already collaborations about that are doing the services that you need, as well as identifying where is the need and opportunity, and equally important, to determine whether or not there is more commitment within your organization on campus or in the community to support that partnership. The next is really starting to go and recruit the right people and the right organizations. So it's not just, oh, I must work with so and so. You need to find that both the individual, making sure that they have the time and capacity and interest to work on that, as well as with the organizations to identify, do they have the resources or the unique skill sets that you're looking for? And oftentimes it's a bit of a blind dating to go and meet a few people and see who might be best to work with yourself before and even exploring if they are interested as well. The third step is identifying the resources that you're going to need. Now, it's really important to recognize that this working in partnership does take time. It is not something, and oftentimes many partnerships that fail are because they're activities that are done side of desk in addition to all the commitments and work that you're delivering. It's really important to determine what resources and capacity you have to contribute, what your partners have, as well as looking at the potential of what you want to work on. Do you have sufficient resources? The next step would be to determine the structure of the collaborative partnership. And this is really getting a better sense of the clarity of among the partners as to what the mission, the vision, and the principles are that are going to guide your work together. Setting up the processes needed to manage and sustain the partnership, whether that be written down in terms of an MOU, but having very clear roles and responsibilities that each partner knows what they're going to be delivering and accountable for. And of course, that would include roles and responsibilities and even assigned memo of understanding, though I do want to point out, depending on the type of the partnership, it does not always require to have formal paperwork signed. But if there are resources and commitments, then you do want to have that clarity up front. Step 5 is developing a communication strategy. And really, this is a critical point to determine and all agree to how you want to communicate amongst each other. Whether, is it going to be by email? Is it going to be weekly meetings or monthly? Who's going to be responsible for keeping the communications up to date and keeping track and records of what you're planning on doing and what you've agreed to? Similar to under the theory of collective impact, communications and ongoing communications is a critical and oftentimes the biggest barrier and failure of partnerships when people aren't knowing who the right hand and the left hand are doing. Once you've agreed on the partnership, it really is important to develop an action plan, a work plan. This often might even be a plan that is submitted to receive funding. And the plan needs to be concrete with very clear goals and objectives, making them SMART, that they're specific, achievable, relevant, time-based, and oftentimes a little challenging because these types of partnerships are about thinking outside of the box. After that, the next step is really thinking about and identifying the risk factors. Far better to have a healthy discussion at the beginning of your relationship to identify what some of your potential fears or concerns are that might occur and talk about them in advance and even develop some mitigating practices to avoid them while everyone is happy. It's kind of like a prenup versus a divorce. It's far better to have those healthy conversations at the beginning. And that actually leads to very much the next step of creating an open environment. Really, a good, healthy, effective partnership is built on trust and understanding. And also, I'm going to point out, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it's important to develop those the environment that people feel trusted, they can share their concerns, they can share their joys, but really that it is clear and open and supporting diversity of opinions and views, but really inclusive of all. And the final step is often one that people forget because we're always too busy moving on to the next. It really is important to celebrate successes, acknowledge the milestones when you've made it through a significant hurdle, rather than just moving on to the next. So it is important from that perspective. So now I want to talk about a little more detail and part of the checklist of the elements of partnerships. So as I said, and some of the steps have identified, this is a bit of a deeper drill down. The very first piece is to make sure that you do have the adequate resources, both funding, staff, materials, and time to really invest in the partnership. Side of desks does really not work. The next is really developing those effective operations. It's like the image on the screen, it's the gears and how we're going to work together. Who's going to do what? Having the clear roles and responsibilities, having the action plan, identifying who's going to be both managing the project and really being not command and control, but air traffic control of the project, but also of maintaining the partner engagement. If you think about, and from a collective impact perspective, this is often the role of backbone organizations that are really helping to smooth and keep the project and the partners engaged. Another key piece is really having skilled leadership to guide the partnership and the project activities. And again, this goes to the backbone activities, but it's where there is someone who knows how to engage with the partners, identify potential partners, work with them as the project unfolds, work effectively to analyze and identify opportunities as well as figure out when challenges occur, but really just to help manage those operations. And then the last piece is really about having engaged partners. It is making sure that the partners at the table are there and are using the skills that they have, that they are not being asked to do things that don't fit within their mandate or priorities, and really engage partners who have the skills and resources to commit and identify that it's a win-win to be part of this, that by working in partnership with another organization helps them to achieve their organizational mandate more effectively than if they did it on their own. I next want to go through some of the checklists, and you'll notice there's not an initial slide for resources, but I think everyone knows that you really can't start this without. But if we're talking about elements of effective operations, so again, for those of you in a partnership, this could be a healthy list to think through both on your own or have a discussion during a meeting in terms of ensuring that do you have a clear and shared vision and purpose, that the goals and objectives continue. And often, let's face it, sometimes partnerships you begin a project and the context and the environment may change. Sometimes those goals that you wanted to achieve may not be achievable. Far better to have a discussion and adjust them as the project unfolds, but making sure that everyone is clear and on the same page with respect to that. The other is making sure that the plan is effective and it's efficient, that I've been involved with many projects that sometimes there are far too many partner meetings where everyone just comes together and they're sitting there talking about the same things. There's times to work and plan and coordinate, but there's also times when just do your work. So making sure that I develop those appropriate processes to keep everyone informed, but also with sufficient time to actually get the work done. We've talked about from the leadership really is important in terms of the coordination. And while no one really loves to get into the administrative structures, but it is important from the get-go to have an understanding, terms of reference, that people know how decisions are going to be made, how individuals and organizations are selected, the membership, how you're going to govern yourselves, and having that in place. Again, in terms of how do you identify and resolve conflicts when they occur? And let's face it, they will always occur. And if they don't, then there's something a little probably wrong with what you're doing, because I've never seen any project unfold smoothly with no hiccups on the road, but really having an understanding of how you're going to be identifying it and dealing with it. And of course, it's being able to have the operations, to have the resources, allocate them fairly so that each partner feels that they are being rewarded or recognized or reimbursed for their efforts. Because another key piece of sometimes the challenges is that imbalance. And a commitment to evaluate the processes and outcomes for continuous learning. And I was having a conversation with one organization that was working in a partnership, and a key piece is really to have mechanisms in place to evaluate the partnership, not at the end when everything is complete, but during. Identify some of the 2-3 metrics that you may find important both for the project to give you kind of quick turnaround of how it's going, but equally important about the partnership itself. And that leads to the documentation, reporting of your accomplishments and celebrating milestones. Leadership. As we know, if you have working in partnership, one of the most difficult tasks is organizing and scheduling the meetings. Who's going to be in charge of pulling all the pieces together to organize and have the reports and continue to move the project forward? This role is an important. The skilled leadership is understanding and having the skills and time to devote to the partnership, flexible and good facilitation skills in terms of encouraging and accepting differing points of view, problem solving, resolving conflicts, as well as the open communications. And you'll see that many of these points, they go across both from operations to leadership, because it really is across the board, and each and every one has that responsibility. But someone to be not in charge, but overseeing that is important. And I personally do believe it really does help if you have a bit of a sense of humor. Sometimes to especially in moments of conflict, is just to be able to make light to smooth the air. Next slide, please. Engage partners. One of the most important is to ensure that each and every partner, one, agrees and is committed to the work of the project and the vision, and see it as being in their self-interest. And I really want to stress that one of the biggest challenges I've come across with many organizations that work with is the inability to say a lovely 2-letter word, no. Thank you very much. I love your project, but it doesn't fit my time frame, my mandate, my need. I encourage you. I hope you are successful, but no, I cannot participate. It works when it's in your best interest. And to be clear about your selfishness of sorts, to ensure that your work aligns with the mandate of your organization, is really important. And that goes to the next of having a stake in it, that you're not just, it's an extra, but this really is important to make sure that you, in your own personal work, as well as the work of your organization, is successful. We've talked about having the clarity of roles and responsibilities, but also making sure that it's using your skills and interests and resources appropriately. As well as the partners not wait for someone else to just make the plans, but are active. Each and everyone is actively involved appropriately in both the planning, the implementation, and the evaluation, taking responsibility for certain tasks, as well as ensuring that starting to take the time to develop those trust and interpersonal connections. As in anything, if you work with someone you enjoy their company, it's a far healthier and more productive partnership than if you don't know the person and or there are issues if sometimes there is a conflict. And we've talked about recognizing and accepting that conflict will occur from time to time, and being flexible and open to how decisions might be made or work be done. Now, as I've said, those last 3 pages really provide that checklist for you to help to assess both your partnerships now and into the future. Now I want to talk a little bit about, and I think all of you might agree, there are tremendous benefits of working in partnership, but there also are some risks. We know that you can greater impact, broader reach, even professional and personal development for your staff, access to both information and networks, efficiency, more innovation, enhanced credibility often of one organization working with another, sometimes the intangible benefits for a smaller organization to work with a larger go far beyond the value of the project, and even new pathways for both products and services and partnerships. So one partnership may lead to the other. The other on the downside is the issue of it can impact your reputation. If it turns out that you are working on a project, your name and your organization is on, and either parts of the project are falling, have not been implemented correctly, not meeting deliverables of funders, perhaps other issues that arise, you need to make sure that you're managing and overseeing to ensure that the best interests of your organization and reputation are not going to be damaged. Other is sometimes decision making, you won't have everything just the way you want it or the way your organization needs it. And depending, so on sometimes if you need to discuss at the beginning the types of what are the decision making processes, who needs to make the decisions, how long does it take to get all those approvals, because it is important to ensure that that is identified. We've talked about the conflicts of interest that will occur from time to time, but also some of the burden of the resource commitments that, you can get sucked into contributing too much to a project that you didn't identify. So really to have an understanding upfront of being clear of what resources you can and where you cannot commit more. I recently was sitting at a table with one partner who his supervisor said, we love this project, we support you to be engaged. However, given your current mandate to do A, B, C, and D, I want you to really make sure that you don't overpromise what you can deliver, because you don't have the capacity to deliver more. Again, there will be, as we said, implementation and coordination challenges. So that really is, again, going back to that importance of a strong leadership and also a strong voice at the table when things do go awry. We've discussed decision making, but it is important to know, and sometimes for organizations, you will have less control over all decisions that are made. And I think this one you will all find as probably one of the biggest challenges is the fact that in many collaborative environments, individual organizations are all chasing the same pool of funding. And so one needs to balance that with the opportunity of working together and maybe applying for funding and shared funding that you can both benefit from. But this is not a small trivial risk. This is very important, and important to be clear as you start discussing your partnerships about the challenges and how you're going to address that. Insufficient influence in partnership activities. This is important in terms of not all partners are created equal. There will be some imbalances, and as you start discussing the roles and responsibilities and how you're going to work together, acknowledging them as well as putting them on the table to ensure that won't be an issue. And frustration, because some people like to work on process. I personally, it's something I enjoy doing, to talk about how we're going to work together, how the groups are going to make decisions, developing in terms of reference, etc. There's a lot of people that really don't want to do process and aren't skilled at that, but are brilliant at implementing their programs. And is really finding you need both of those skill sets, but making sure that you probably minimize the time that those individuals who are brilliant at implementing but really not wanting to focus on process, that it isn't too process driven that nothing gets done, but the other side is not focusing so much on implementation that the process is abandoned. And the last is important is recognition and credit for the contributions. It is very important. I know there was one, it's like, oh, I'm so sorry, by accident your logo was left off that document. You don't want to let that happen, and part of it is just making sure and being cognizant that that's an important piece. I know we've talked about a lot of both at a theoretical level as well as identifying the steps of how to build a partnership, and I want to just close on just some of and these are my personal views in terms of just some tips, the final checklist of what you might want to do when starting or maintaining a successful and sustainable partnership. The first is make sure you do your research. Learn about the organization or the person before you approach a new relationship, or if you're going to reconnect. Make sure that you know what their capacity is, what's happening with them, how they've been. You may want to talk to others who have worked with them before, just to get a sense of what kind of partner they would be before you move forward. Another piece, and this is again a tag to the center, is if you're having trouble identifying or even knowing who to partner with, maybe ask other people, who might I partner with, and also who might I make the introduction with. Nothing is better than an e-introduction. If you know someone who knows someone, say, could you make that first introduction, so it's not a blind cold call. Once you start that, is set up an exploration meeting to just learn more about each other. It really is, it's like dating. It's the first, can we go for coffee before you want to have dinner or maybe a weekend away? And I've made Cecilia laugh about that one. And again, start small. Sometimes rather than, let's plan together to work on a 3-year program, let's do one little project. Let's see how we work, because that also will inform how you may want to get into a more formal relationship in terms of the roles, responsibilities, understanding each other's strengths, weaknesses, even as I talked about, even how decisions are made. In a project that I worked on years ago, one of the biggest challenges was the fact that it took almost 2 months for one partner to go through the chain of command to get approval for the project to move forward, and that we weren't aware of that at the beginning. Keep your colleagues and your leadership informed on what's happening. One is to help if there's a challenge. Sometimes you may need to have someone more senior make the phone call to address things that are above your, shall we say, pay grade or level, but also making sure that they know when you've done really good, that they are aware and help celebrate the success. Related to that, and I think that this is probably the biggest challenge, and it's structural and it's not going to go away. People leave. There's always transitions in jobs, and you're not going to do anything to make that stop. And if not well planned, it can really jeopardize the implementation and timeframes of your project. One of the best recommendations I could suggest to all is really try to develop relationships deeper and broader than just one individual within the organization. And it may be that you ask your primary partner to make sure that you're connected with, that others are briefed, and yourself as well, so that if it turns out that you were leaving, that you're not abandoning and leaving the project to fall on a void because no one knows how to pick it up. I have worked on so many, and this truly is one of the biggest issues to address. And there are ways that you can find to mitigate the impact on the project. Be open, be flexible, be a little patient. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And remember, you need to make investments in the relationship and in the project, not just in what you're doing. This kind of goes the second to last one. It goes a little bit to the 2-letter word of no. It's really important if things aren't working. I know they can be difficult conversations, but it really is important to talk about it. And I think you can find ways and bring them up. And typically, if you're having an issue, I'm sure the other partner is having a similar issue, but perhaps from a different perspective. Having the time and taking the time to have that open conversation is important. And if it's not working, don't be afraid to take a pause, or even really to part ways. Again, you're working. Remember my talk about the importance of it. You need to be selfish. This needs to work for you and your organization. And at times, some partnerships work well, and at other times, they just don't. My last is there was a consortium of multiple partners that the partnership started 20 years ago, and it was based on individual relationships with a strong trust, and work together and a shared vision to really work towards a goal. 20 years later, these organizations, many of them had evolved, transformed, and people were coming to the partnership just because it had always been that way, but not because it was effective. And so in the end, I really rejoiced for them when they actually folded the partnership because it really wasn't working the way it needed to be. And finally, as always, do have fun. It goes with having a sense of humor. It should work. I mean, the work should be fun. Sometimes it's painful, but sometimes it's great. But if you're working in things you enjoy, it's important. And now I'm going to pass you on to Cecilia.
All right, so we're going to get into a bit more about the actual campus community projects and systems and some examples of things in the team as well. So really the aim of this project is to help support you in building long-lasting collaborative partnerships with either campus or community partners. And our hope is that through these partnerships, you're going to be able to create or expand programs or initiatives that you're working on that are going to enable you folks to better support the services, or rather the students who are seeking out and using your mental health services and resources that you're providing. And this can be whether these services are offered on a campus or off campus in the community. So there are a variety of programs and initiatives that really fall into the bounds of this project. And some of them are more specific to certain student populations, and then there are others that are more broad. And we will get into some examples a little later on in this webinar. So just going back to sort of some of the pieces that Sharon was touching on why you should be partnering, we know that the demand for services, particularly for post-secondary students around mental health, is really increasing. And we know that on both ends, folks are having some trouble meeting these demands for a variety of reasons. And we know that the links between campus and community aren't always as developed as we'd hope that they could be. And we know that both individual campuses and community agencies have a lot of skills that each partner could really benefit from and learn from. And that's why partnership can oftentimes be a really effective means of tackling some of these issues. And we know that helping to develop and strengthen partnerships both between campus and community can really help service providers to just in general be able to better support the needs of the students that are coming their way. And on our end here at CICMH, we just really believe that when we work together, there's so much that can be done to improve the mental health and wellness of students. And that's why we've created this toolkit and this program to really help support the development of campus community partnerships. So I'll get into now some of the actual supports that we're offering through the project. And really, the main reason why we are offering these supports is that we know that there can be a lot of barriers to creating partnerships. Sometimes you might not know what's offered in the community around you. If you know about what's out there, you might not necessarily know the scope of those services or programs. You may not, like Sharon was saying, have a lot of contacts at the institution that you want to work with, or you may not really know who does that work, or you may not have time to dedicate to building that partnership because really that partnership work is being added onto your already full portfolio. So some of the supports that CICMH is offering is we're able to help with things like identifying potential partners, facilitating those introductions, and actually setting up and coordinating meetings for you to start having those conversations about what you folks might potentially be able to work on, helping you to define those partnership goals, create any documents that are necessary for your partnership. We're also working to help provide any resources you might need to actually get a program or service off the ground. So if you need, like we were mentioning, access to our toolkits or specific research about a program, we've also got resources to support the developing and strengthening of partnerships in particular. And then we're also able to sort of facilitate connections and knowledge sharing around getting better connected with folks who are experts in maybe a particular area of interest of yours or a particular project that you're looking to work on. So this needs assessment result is really a background on some of why we're doing this work and why we're offering the supports that I sort of just ran through. So really the reason why we're doing this work is because our needs assessment has shown that about 70% of the folks who responded felt that we should really be focused on making, identifying, and facilitating more and stronger connections between campus and community. And they felt like this should be a sort of focus for us as we develop our future plans. We've also seen that when it came to how we could better support you and your team around campus community partnerships, we saw that over 60% of folks who filled out the needs assessment were looking for supports in one of the following areas, whether it was identifying potential partnerships, facilitating introductions, or supporting the development and strengthening of partnerships. And then we also saw that over 70% of people who filled out this needs assessment were also looking for supports with resources to develop specific programs or services. So the results are really showing us that folks are really eager to make these connections so that they can form partnerships, and they're also looking for the supports to be able to do that piece. So since the summer of 2019, when we really began to jump into this project, we have done email reach outs to every campus in Ontario, so tried to touch base with at least one person there. And we've actually been able to also have telephone or in-person meetings with over 85% of these campuses. So taking a bit more of a look at the projects that we are supporting, right now we have 17 projects that we would classify as in development. And for us, this means that these folks are working together with a partner to sort of build their idea and finalize what they want to do, and we're supporting as they go along the way with that partnership, asking questions, helping them to sort of sort out what's feasible for them at this time, and helping sort of pave that way to solidifying that partnership. We've also got 11 projects that we're supporting that are newly formed. So these are projects that we're supporting where the partners have really finalized their project idea. It's gone through the process involved in the campus community partnership framework, where it's gotten sort of my eyes to look at it, and our executive committee has had their chance to look and provide feedback. And those folks are well on their way to starting those projects and getting them up off the ground. So out of these projects that we're currently helping to support, the potential reach of them is at almost 2,000 students, which is really exciting to know that there's just that many more students who are going to be able to access mental health supports or resources in a different way in the upcoming year. So another question comes of, well, where are these projects exactly happening? And something that's really exciting is that we're seeing folks from all across the province, from every corner, coming to us with ideas on places where they can partner with other organizations to help increase access to mental health supports and resources for students. So a few examples of projects that we have that have been sort of newly formed are, there's a partnership currently going on between Loyalist College and Counseling Services of Belleville and District, where they're collaborating, and it's a new program and a new partnership. And they're working together to provide relational therapy to students and their families who may be living with PTSD, as that's a region where there happens to be a high number of students with PTSD because of links to the Canadian Armed Services and being close to a base there and those sorts of pieces. And the process for them works that the students are being referred via campus clinicians to the relational therapy services that are at this community partner, and these students and their families are able to access up to 6 sessions of relational therapy to be able to start that work on improving their mental health and the mental health of their families. The next project that we're going to talk about is the University of Windsor and CICMH Windsor Essex project. And this is interesting because it's actually expanding an existing program between a long-standing partnership where they've worked on a variety of other projects and programs. So something that they were really interested in doing was implementing a continuum of mental health trainings for their student leaders. So this continuum includes Safe Talk and Assist, and a lot of other mental health trainings that they felt would be really beneficial to this particular subset of students. And one of the really great things that they've done is they've actually pinpointed some key points in the year that would be really accessible for students to be able to seek out this training. So at the beginning of the semester, when they're a little less busy, and another space is during Suicide Awareness Week, when their thoughts around mental health might be a little bit heightened and they're doing and taking some more time to look into resources around that piece. The last project that I wanted to mention is really interesting because it is one that involves quite a few players in the partnership. We've actually got a project that's just about to get off the ground that we're helping to support, where we've actually got 3 campuses involved, so 2 universities and a college, also involving their local CMHA and support from a local hospital. And this one came together in a very interesting way because all 3 campuses were separately looking for ways to bring BBT groups to their campuses. And although each campus had slightly differing needs, there was a lot of overlap between the structure that they were trying to bring to their campuses. So they decided to get together collectively and approach their CMHA and the hospital to sort of work on editing a program that already existed between the CMHA and the hospital to make it work in a campus context, and to then have their campus clinical staff trained in a sort of train the trainer model where those folks would gain the skills to be able to run those DBT groups and would then also be able to instruct their colleagues on how to run those groups as well. So not only is a new service being brought to the campus, the sustainability and the institutional knowledge is there because it doesn't just rely on those 3 folks who went and did that training one time. They're then able to pass on that knowledge so that if ever any of them leaves their institution, they won't be they won't be the sole knowledge bearer for that program. Other folks will be able to continue that on and allow that program to live on in those spaces, which is really important. One thing I wanted to touch on as well was the ideas of Memoranda of Understanding that Sharon brought up. And these are just documents that outline the scopes of the projects that partners are working on and delineate their roles. So we do have some examples in the toolkit, and you're more than welcome to check those out and use them as a base to start building your own pieces. So really quickly, we're going to go through a case study that is in the toolkit that you're able to check out for more information. So this was between Loft Community Services and Ryerson University. And this case study focuses around building a partnership to address the needs of students with complex care. And this is a program where students were able to be referred in through Ryerson's campus clinicians to Loft Services. And then through that referral, we're able to access the full gamut of services that Loft offers. So various therapy groups, access to psychiatry, and also case management services, which we've noted that are often a big need for students with complex care needs. So really, this partnership let these folks access care in a timely manner while also increasing Ryerson's capacity to meet the needs of students with less complex care needs that may have had to wait longer for services. So you're more than welcome to check out that case study in the toolkit, which is actually just launched today, and see some of the other case studies that are there as well. So we'll run our last poll really quickly for you folks. So in this poll, we're just really looking to see what types of supports you would really be interested in engaging with. So we'll give you a few moments for that. All right, so it looks like a pretty good split between interested in sort of getting better connected with folks with more experience in the area that you're interested in working in, providing actual resources to develop those programs or services, and doing some of that groundwork around identifying potential community or campus partnerships, which all three of those are really big focuses of what we're working right now in this project. That's really great. So here's just a listing of some of the resources that are available in the toolkit, which you're able to take a look at on your own time and go through and see which ones might be helpful for you as sort of a launching pad for the beginning of your partnership. And here we've just shared again another link to the toolkit as well. But if you go on our webpage and you click in the top bar where it says toolkit, the toolkit is also on that landing page as well. So now we've got a couple of minutes. So if there are any questions or discussion pieces that folks would want to bring up, you're more than welcome to drop those into the chat.
And while we're waiting, I see people typing, but on behalf of both Cecilia and I want to thank you all who were able to spend the time with us today. We hope you found that helpful, and please don't hesitate to reach out through the website, and Cecilia left her contact information if you have any other questions.
I can pull that slide up just quickly so you folks have it, but the webinar will also be online and shared out to everyone who's attended today. My email's on there so that you can get in contact with me with any questions about the toolkit or the project.
There's one question of who you're connecting with.
Yeah, so the question is, when you said you connected with campuses, are you connecting with campus counseling service or student associations? We're connecting with a variety of folks on different campuses, so it's all the way from sort of the directors of health and wellness to counseling services. To some campuses, it's actually student unions or student associations. So it's really whomever on the campus sort of has a project that they're looking to engage with a community partner. So like we were saying earlier, that we serve a variety of constituents on campus, we also work with a variety of them on this project too. So we've got one more question coming in, and I think that one will be our last one before we've got to wrap up because I know we're at time.
While we're just sort of waiting for that last question to roll in, this is Perlin. I just want to thank everybody for attending. I apologize for some of the technical difficulties we had earlier. And yeah, just so you know, the slides and the recording of the webinar will be up on our website tomorrow. And at the end of the webinar, there's going to be a pop-up survey for your evaluation on the webinar. Please fill that out, as that's really helpful to us. And I see that the question has come in, so I'll let you two take that away again.
Yeah, so I can read that out. This question says that you spoke about one important element is to ensure that there is funding. I find that people resist partnerships because of a lack of funds, but oftentimes collaborating can be more efficient, and then in the end there are savings. How do you approach this barrier of perceiving that we can't share funds?
A very good question, and I think part of it goes to some of the tips of starting small. It may be the first step is to identify what current resources you have that you could theoretically not double dip, but double dip to use. And secondly, it also, if the partnership is working well, that efficiency and savings may be demonstrated so it can support more. But part of it is you have to have partners that are willing to take a bit of a leap of faith to start out. And then there's also the second piece is once you figure it out, it's applying together for funding to continue to work, to do the work that you want to do together. I could talk more about this, but I know our time is up. And again, please feel free. And if you do have questions directly for me, connect through Cecilia, and she'll happily pass them on. But thank you again for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
All right, folks, thank you so much once again, and we'll see you on our next webinar next week, which is on walk-in counseling on campus. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone.